Hello there, and welcome back to Hydroponics Daily, your go-to podcast for everything soilless cultivation. I'm your host, Dr. Russell Sharp, the founder of Utrema Limited, and we make novel fertilizers, interesting biostimulants, and organic biopesticides. One of the things we don't make is titanium fertilizers, but I would like to talk about titanium today because it's really interesting. We talked previously, we did an episode about fertilizers that can claim to contain 70, 80, 90 elements and said that this was either absolute bumcum, is that the word, bumcum? Or nonsense, or they were very dangerous. I didn't mention, of all the elements I mentioned on that podcast, and there was a lot, I didn't mention titanium. And for good reason, because it's not an essential element, but it's also not super toxic to plants or radioactive or highly toxic to humans, but it's not straightforward. It's a really interesting element. And so I thought I'd talk about that today in its own podcast episode. When we think of titanium, the first thing that comes to mind, if you're a child of the 80s, like me, is Robocop and his titanium plated armor. But titanium has a lot of uses. Titanium dioxide is used in suncream. The white suncream and lots of white dyes contain titanium. It's a extremely, flammable metal in its, when you create a dust with it, health and safety hazard. But you can also get chelated titanium. Titanium lactate, I think, is what's the chelated form that can be put into solution. And let me just check that. Yeah, I can't find that. But yeah, so basically titanium, it's not an essential nutrient. No study has ever shown that plants need it to complete their life cycle. No deficiency symptoms are known, and you won't be able to get any pictures of deficiency symptoms because there is no such thing. However, a number of studies have reported that growth and quality of plants can be gained with low doses of titanium, and the key there is low doses, which potentially makes it a beneficial element. So like silicon. Okay, but it's very different to silicon, and don't just jump to go and get titanium fertilizer. Titanium ascorbate, that's the one that's commonly used as a chelated form. Now, the positive effects have been documented for soluble chelated titanium salts applied to roots and foliage, and also for titanium dioxide nanoparticles. So not the sort of titanium you'd find in suncream, but the nanoparticles that can be used for seed priming or for foliar sprays. And the beauty of the nanoparticles is that you can get the titanium into the plant, which would be a problem normally because it's such a big atom. Now, the responses vary strongly between plant species, the type of titanium used, the particle size, the application method, but they also depend on the amount of titanium and also the nutrient status of the plant. Now, we talked in the past about Liebig's barrel and said that it's not really useful for anything other than elementary sort of level 1 plant nutrition 101. After that, it becomes a lot more complicated because the amount of iron in the plant governs how the plant will respond to titanium addition. And also the amount of titanium applied governs how the plant will respond. So the benefits are reported at low doses to begin with. So the number of studies frequently note things like higher chlorophyll and photosynthetic activity, more biomass, improved nutrient uptake, stronger stress tolerance when the titanium is applied. But it's normally in a situation where the growing media is lacking in nutrition, particularly iron nutrition. Now, titanium can modulate nutrient acquisition and root architecture, increase the things that will absorb iron and also phosphorus uptake. And it's thought it does this by altering auxin levels and other rooting traits and other biochemicals, things that would naturally absorb iron from the soil. So sometimes they can be synergistic at low levels. If the iron is low and the titanium is low, then they can help each other. Some elements can actually substitute for each other, but not sure. I've not seen any reports of titanium substituting for iron in any enzymes or molecular things. So it can also increase antioxidant enzymes, which can be beneficial for both crop growth and quality, and enhanced tolerance to salinity and osmotic stress and some pathogens. So that's an interesting one. Now, at higher doses, you get toxicity from titanium. So it's not a dose response curve. It's what's termed, and I've never come across this term before, hormetic, which means that low concentrations tend to stimulate growth, whereas higher doses can be neutral or inhibitory. So excessive titanium in tissues is associated with chlorosis, yellowing, or necrosis, death, and just the suppression of growth. So this is a biphasic pattern and lacks well-defined toxic thresholds. So you need to be really careful. This is why I would never use a titanium fertilizer, because it would be so easy to go from the tiny little dose that's required to boost growth to going over the edge and actually poisoning your plants, as it were. It's not worth the risk, really. You don't know what the other nutrient status is of the plant, what doesn't know how it would be affected by the age of the plant and things like this. So you would really be taking a gamble, and it's not really a gamble you need to be taking. Better to just get the other nutrients right, increase the iron levels to where they're not deficient. That's the easiest answer for this. So other interesting things, though, you can have light-dependent effects on photosynthesis, so photosynthesis. So foliar applications to titanium dioxide, a bit like suncream for humans. If you put the suncream on the plants, it can improve, or it's been found to improve, light use efficiency and chlorophyll under low light, but with neutral or even negative shifts in some photochemical parameters under high light. That underscores this strong context dependency of titanium. And that study was published in Nature. So this is not from titanium fertilizer selling companies' websites. I've got all this information from scientific journals, and you have to be careful with this because there's a lot of information about titanium fertilizers just on the websites of people who are trying to sell it, and obviously they will say it's an amazing product. It's often sold for sports turf and lawns because of this ability to improve iron nutrition, and iron is a big one for sports and lawns, not so much in hydroponics. So that's something to consider. If you look at the mobility of the plant and the mobility of the elements, I think it's quite difficult to move around. Foliar applications can enable uptake through stomata, but it depends on the species, and they often show low mobility, especially the nanoparticles. So that's also something to consider. You can't just add this to your fertigation stream and hope that it goes systemically around your plant. Interestingly, gold nanoparticles can actually be sprayed onto plants and can be used as a way of tracking the absorption of metals through leaves, because gold is an inert metal that won't have any effect on the plant, but can be accumulated in plants. So an interesting story about titanium, far from straightforward, and a lot of gaps still in the knowledge base about how plants interact with titanium. It's an area of study, especially in the biostimulant world. A lot of biostimulants have been developed containing some titanium. I'm not sure where you get natural sources of titanium in soil or in the environment, but if you know of any, let me know. And perhaps around suncream manufacturing sites or anywhere where they make hardened armor for the military or law enforcement. If you are more of an expert on that than me, then let me know, and I'd love to hear from you. That's been Hydroponics Daily for today. If you found it at all interesting or useful, then please leave us an Apple Podcast review. If you're not listening on Apple, don't bother leaving a review, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't help. There's no charts that it helps with, and doesn't help share the podcast. But do still follow the podcast, click follow, and check out utrema.co.uk. We don't sell titanium fertilizers, but we do sell fertilizer containing every essential nutrient and some very interesting, novel additives, biostimulants, and things you won't find in anybody else's portfolio. Thank you very much for listening to Hydroponics Daily today, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Goodbye.